in the book, chapter 12 talks about how this came to be. It's a very unusual and ironic rule. And the irony of it is that in 1976, newspaper guys ginning up a story got Congress involved to eliminate student loan debt, only student loan debt, credit card, car debt, mortgages. The only one that's in this category is student loan debt. And then it snowballed over the years. And now in 2003, it's just impossible. In fact, one source told me that 1 out of 2,500 applicants for relief of student loan debt gets it granted.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. You know, we talk a lot about finances, personal finances. We've talked many, many times in the past about student loan debt. Many of you out there, even if you don't have children, you have relatives, you've got friends whose kids are basically virtual debt slaves from here to eternity. Well, we've got somebody on here who can help you with that situation. His name is Dave Shutler. Dave, student loan expert that you are, you recommend that people avoid them. Your book, Graduate Debt-Free, Escaping the Student Loan Matrix, I would call it the student loan shackles, really has hit home to a lot of people. So first, student loans. It seems like you get a subsidized loan, you can go to a better school than you might otherwise have gone to, you can afford to pay your living expenses, and then when you get out and hopefully you get a good job, you'll be able to pay for all this. What's wrong with that?
Well, what's wrong with the picture is that there has not been, for the longest time, a way to calculate that. For your listeners who are interested in basically the financial analysis of this whole deal, up until recently, 2019, the answer to the critical question in student loan debt could not be found. Lawyers call it an imponderable. You can't figure it out. But in 2019, Department of Education released a ton of public data, and you can now ask a simple question. What does an English major at Duke University make upon graduation? Now, that sounds very benign, but there's so many things that flow from that, because when you have that piece of information, you can go backwards to the true calculation that you need to figure out. So an English major at Duke University, that's what I was. I can bust on myself. Whatever they make, that we have a rule of thumb that says that is your cap. And once you have your cap figured out, as far as what the amount of debt that you can take on, then you can go backwards for it. There's a lot of working through on that. But I point that out because it leads to the second key point for students in college, and that is pick your major first, then pick your school. 2 reasons. You pick the major because that's what you want to do when you grow up. Mm-hmm. And secondly, then you can find a school.
Wait, who wants to grow up here?
Yeah.
I'm never growing up here.
Yes, you are. You have to.
I'm trying to avoid it.
So those are the background things, particularly for your listeners who are trying to think through this financial deal. The book, of course, goes into a lot more detail about it, but that's the framework.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so figure out your major. And like I heard stories, people learning puppetry, right? Going for their master's in puppetry. Is there a way to figure out how much you can make as a puppeteer other than working for the government?
There is. I've got a page in the book that to me is just exquisite. You pull up that page. A page that shows it's from Indeed.com, but it shows average salaries for this whole range of technical to non-technical. And why I find it exquisite is that you can go, okay, well, I don't want to be a puppeteer, but I do want to be a graphic artist. Okay, what's a graphic artist make? From the school that I want to go to, Oberlin maybe. And then you go backwards and you go, oh, wait a second. A graphic artist makes around $40,000. Well, if that's the case, then I got to be very careful I got to be very careful to not exceed that. And so this is where a lot of students have gotten into trouble, where they've gone to expensive private schools and they studied puppetry or another course that floated their boat, but didn't really produce the information that they wanted. So this is the page in the book, and it is backed by Department of Education, Indeed.com, and it just takes, mechanical engineer up the top, and down at the bottom is a studio arts, $41,000 for studio arts, engineering, $69,000. So if you know this before you go into the enterprise, then you can say, okay, well, I got to get that degree in a place that doesn't leave me with a ton of debt. And so again, more in the book breaks it out, but for your listeners to know that that's the question they want to be asking. What's the major they want? And then not the school. I want to go to an Ivy League school because I love the look of the school. I wanted to go to Harvard. They didn't have me. They wouldn't have me, if you can believe that.
Shocker.
Yeah.
Shocked and saddened here.
It is. Anyway, so that gives you a framework for what the book is about is turning this thing upside down so that the students and the parents have a very good idea of what they're going to incur for debt.
Okay. And yeah, so, when I always liken this, the elderly, senior citizens, if you want to take out a reverse mortgage on your home, you're forced to take I don't remember how many hours, 5 or 10 hour course online about all the ins and outs and the hidden costs of taking out a reverse mortgage. But, for a student, an 18-year-old kid, 17-year-old kid, they don't understand any of this. No, and there's nothing out there for them up until now, till your book, and with the research tools to actually figure out if this is a good investment or not. Shouldn't they be forced to take at least a couple of week course on the intricacies of student debt and the non-dischargeability of the debt and all of this?
Well, it's interesting you ask that because we offer such a course. I've never seen one. I don't see anything. I'm retired military, 25 years, so I've had federal background, private background. I'm a lawyer by training, business owner now. I've never seen anything in any of these. There is some stuff. There is some good information from Indeed and a couple other sources. But this thing that you're talking about, we identified a need that we think is pretty significant because there's nothing that tells these young guys, young gals, what's going to happen to them. And so that's the notion of what we're doing now. But go back to your comment about that you had to take a 5-hour course. What does a 5-hour course tell you? When you're about to sign away, you're upside down, basically. You're about to sign away. And so my thought on it as you're navigating this is that if you have sort of the parameters of it, what's going on, which is what the book intends to do, then when you go into the meeting with the loan officer or the lender, and they say, okay, you're qualified for a $50,000 loan. And you go, well, how in the world would I pay back $50,000? They go, we don't care.
Very slowly. Right?
Very slowly. We don't care. You just got to do it. And back to your point, indentured servitude, there's about 114,000 people who are in indentured servitude because they're paying back an offset from the Social Security or from some other loan that they got years ago. So you want to be very, very alert to that danger.
I'm just going to pass by a little anecdote, little story. A friend of mine,
okay,
he owed like $1,600. They lost track of him. He lost track of them. And, he was not adverse to paying it back. Next thing he knows, he filed for a New York State tax return and they grabbed it. And it was for far more than the $1,600 that he originally owed. I mean, you become a target and this thing's for life. Most debts, we have what's called a statute of limitations. You default on a credit card, hey, they got 5 years to sue you and get a judgment. They get a judgment, they have 10 years or 20 years. But unfortunately, death taxes and student loans are forever.
That's a fact. In the book, chapter 12 talks about how this came to be. It's a very unusual and ironic rule. And the irony of it is that in 1976, newspaper guys ginning up a story got Congress involved to eliminate student loan debt, only student loan debt, credit card, car debt, mortgages. The only one that's in this category is student loan debt. And then it snowballed over the years. And now in 2003, it's just impossible. In fact, one source told me that 1 out of 2,500 applicants for relief of student loan debt gets it granted. This is near impossible. And back to your friend, that's the issue, is that these things are operating in different kinds of realms that you didn't even know about. And $1,600, he could have paid that off and be done. And then whatever it mushroomed to, that's where he is now. And it's a state deal, maybe not even a federal deal. It's a state deal. So our story.
Another story, I knew a lady who was a doctor. She was in her residency and she wasn't a real good money manager. Yeah. And she had like $250,000 worth of debt. She defaulted, and then it gets kicked into default interest. It's paying like 12% a year default interest. And, she's going to do well, but she isn't going to do that well. And what do you say to somebody like that? Hey, they were just, they were careless, the indiscretions of youth. And, look, you buy a house, even if you're in your early 20s,
right?
You get disclosure after disclosure after disclosure. You're actually getting a hard asset.
Yeah.
Its value will fluctuate. Sometimes it's going to go up. Usually it goes up, but there are periods of time where it goes down, like during the mortgage crisis.
Yeah.
But you got an asset. Human capital probably is the most valuable capital on the face of the planet, but it's intangible. And yeah, I went to law school. I got to date myself. When I went to law school back in the 80s,
me too.
I paid a grand total of $15,000 tuition. And literally, I made back that $15,000 in the first 6 months of practicing law. But nowadays, you pay $250 to be a lawyer. It's going to take you 5-10 years to make that money back. Is there a formula that you use to figure out potential income versus debt? How much debt should you take on based on income?
That question I've been puzzling with for a long time, because focus in my book is 16 and 17 and 18-year-olds and their parents. So I'm trying to get them before the barn door, get the horse before the barn door. I forget. Get the horse in there before the barn door.
Yeah.
And the true puzzlement to me is the one you just raised. And John Rodino on your June 8th podcast raised a very incisive question. He said, when the federal government takes away they're not charging anymore, and that goes away, and all these students, 43 million people, with this debt, now suddenly have to make monthly payments where they hadn't accounted for it for 3 years. He said that it might precipitate a
jubilee.
Jubilee.
Oh, it's definitely going to. I mean, because 60-70% who never graduate and they've taken on the debt, they never even got the benefit of that degree that they were promised for whatever reasons, and we don't need to go into that.
Right. Recession. That's what John said. He could precipitate a recession because there's so many of these people, and it's not an insignificant debt. But that's the issue that you've just raised, and I don't really have an answer for. In the book, I give a couple of anecdotal things where people, just focused on the debt for a year or 2 years and lived in a trailer and did everything they could to get the debt. But the harder issue is all these people with all this debt and the limited capacity for them to earn additional funds to pay it off.
Right. So obviously, if you're going for a STEM degree, you're going to get a higher income, at least in theory, right? So it might work. It might make sense there. And if you're going to potentially get a income of $200,000 a year, so maybe 1 year's worth of income going into debt. But if you're looking at less than that in some other field, the other thing is that a lot of you out there get degrees, but you never even get a job in that area, but just going to college has benefited you. Remember, Dave, when we went to college, they said that the average college graduate over the course of their earnings in a lifetime makes $1 million more than a non-college grad. Now, I don't know if that's true or if that's
very good.
Total.
Yeah, that's largely true. Let's break it down just real quick. That's the Hamilton study. It's in the book. And what it says is that at the median, that's the magic word, at the median, the list that I showed you, right at the middle, at the median, college graduates make more than non-graduates. And you're right, it's about $1 million, a little over $1 million. However, the study itself says that some college graduates will make less than some non-college graduates in the trades, because the trades making $75,000 and the college graduates making $45,000. So that premise that you're going to make more money by going to college is generally good once you realize that the thing they're talking about is the median, and you are not the median. You're either at mechanical engineering or you're at whatever course that you go to. Does that address your question?
Yeah. So when you consider that, then you should also think about, hey, am I better off in trade school learning to be a welder, where I'll make close to $100,000 first year out, and that's before overtime, and welders aren't going away, or a plumber, or an electrician, or a carpenter, all these skilled trades, what we call them different things, but just call them dirty jobs. Dirty jobs. Often, hey, you go to trade school, you don't even pay for it normally. All right. But even if you do, it just could make a lot more sense than becoming the puppeteer.
Yeah. And there's a couple of statistics that I think you'll find very interesting, your audience will find very interesting. Of late, let's go back to 2009. In 2009, 70% of students graduated from college. This past year, 62% went on to college from high school. So high school students are walking and voting with their feet. They are going to trade schools. That is a good trend, is that 62% of graduates go on to college, but 38% are going into trades, going into community college type degrees. And the shift that's going on there is relating to the number of colleges that are available because people aren't selecting them. And the most recent statistic is 579 colleges have closed in the last 3 years. That's remarkable.
Well, hey, colleges are going the way of malls, Yeah. Ghost colleges. And look, you and I, we go back to the Vietnam era. I'm a little younger than that, but the trend to go to college took off from there because you got a free deferment from the military. Mm-hmm. That was a way to legally dodge the draft. And if you went to grad school, med school, whatever, law school, you could keep deferring.
That's right.
This created a whole thing where college was the be all and the end all. And look, I went to college, law school like you, and certainly it's been a benefit to me personally, no question. But I paid for college out of current income because it was so cheap back then, relatively speaking. $100 a credit at Pace University, 128 credits, and then your miscellaneous fees. It still came in under $20,000. Not that Pace was that great, but even Ivy League would cost you $50,000 back then. Now it's $50,000 a semester, and even Pace, you wind up owing 6 figures when you get done. Go back to the concept of community college. So my son was a pretty good student, and luckily didn't have to take on student loan debt. But some of the things he did was taking AP courses in high school, which automatically give college credit. Then he took in the summer a couple of courses at the local community college, and they counted both for high school credit and for college credit. So you got, hey, this, I learned this from him, basically. And as a result, he went to UT Austin. He graduated a semester earlier. So that was back then, whatever. It was a substantial savings. He joined the workforce 6 months earlier. So he had 6 more months worth of income. So, and community colleges, a lot of them don't even charge anything. They're free or they're low cost. So even if you're going to go to regular college afterwards, anybody who's having financial issues probably should go to a community college, overload the credits, because if you go to the state school, like in New York, they have to take all of the community college credits. Unlike when you go to a private university, they can say, well, that one really, we can't give you credit for that, right? And right? So really makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
It does. And I'll piggyback on a couple of things that your listeners will be, I think, intrigued by. The basic math is $250 tuition and fees for an hour, semester hour of community college, $2,500 for a semester hour of private university. So it's 10 times different. And the other feature of it is that many community colleges, this is cool, they use the same textbook as their state counterpart. Like you mentioned, UT Austin. So here in Dallas, we have a couple of community colleges, and you can look, you can say, okay, what history book are we using? Okay, that's it. Now you have the exact same curriculum at 1/10 the cost or thereabouts. And then as you're loading up, like your smart son did, you have a launch, and look what he did. He finished it 1 semester early. My son at NYU did it, the exact same thing. He took a whole bunch of AP courses. He went to NYU in his last semester. Because of those, we didn't pay. It was $25,000. It was $50,000 a year at the time, but it's $25,000, which we then gave him to pay off his student debt. And these are features that you can just, build into your process. You obviously did with your son, but these are not rocket science. They're just common sense things that you can do. So I commend that for your son.
So what about the concept, these online colleges? And obviously every college now combines online and personal instruction, but online only schools, often much, much cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah. So
not as prestigious as private universities, but, you get the education, you still get your degree.
Yeah. I'm going to take one step back to launch into this. And that is that in the book, I talk about education a la carte, which is you're a fast food place or you're a family food restaurant, or you're going to Walmart, Target, or Starbucks. Okay. So this trifecta, keep that in mind. That trifecta, through a program called Guild, offers to a part-time employee, 20 hours, a full degree. It's, tuition and fees. So if I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, well, I'm of limited means and I really want a degree. And by the way, there's a couple hundred choices that you've got. So those online degrees require one little thing that are different from going to regular school, I suppose you'd say. They require self-discipline.
Yes.
But the fact that you can do that trifecta, and each of those like at Wendy's or Kentucky Fried Chicken, I've got them in the book. They get the website, the Kindle version. You click on the website, you go right to it. Typically, $5,250. So you're working, you're getting experience, you're getting ready to be an assistant manager. You're also going to school, and you finish up 4 years with no debt at all. So the notion of what's available now, I'd never seen that stuff. I've been researching this book for 8 years.
That's right.
I never saw this stuff, and I go, well, now that's phenomenal. And so it's available. this $5,250. I'll tell you one quick anecdote. A guy that I was talking with in Tucson had a woman who was 40 years old, completely uneducated. She began as a janitor. She found out about this program that he had, and within 4 years, she got her degree and got promoted to sales manager for $140K a year.
That's
from minimum wage. She said, "You can do that?" And he goes, "Yep." So these things are out there. They're available.
They're hacks.
Yeah.
They're hacks. College education.
It's a hack. It's a hack. Yeah.
It's a hack. Hey, tell you another one that, like, it's great when you learn from your kids when they do you. So my son had a talent for languages. He had learned Spanish in high school. Spanish was fluent.
Yeah.
And, he took communications, advertising. That was his bent. But he learned a couple of languages while he was in college. He learned German and then shortly thereafter Dutch. And the thing is, like, American companies want Americans who are multilingual, who can go to these countries in Europe and around the world and understand the language and the culture far better. Because to really understand a culture, you have to speak the language. So my failings in life, speak a little French, but that's it. But, he was thinking of going to grad school. And I said, Brandon, just learn another language. It'll be worth more than the 50s. Even in Europe, it was $50,000 to go get a MBA. And says, I'm not really into management anyway. So now he's learning a couple of additional languages. Every couple of years, he learns a new language and his value goes up. And not to mention, it's impressive when you meet an American who can speak 5 or 6 different languages.
Yeah, they're rare.
So that's another hack, that because it's not something that any career counselor is ever really going to tell you. I thought he was crazy when he was taking German in college. So, why are you taking this? But, multiple jobs with big companies, IBM, and a number of startups, Amazon, other companies that he's been with as a result of his linguistic abilities. Yeah. And something that they don't really talk about.
Well, it's interesting because it wouldn't necessarily be his major. It wouldn't be what he focused on, but it was his love. He was enthralled by that, fascinated by that. And there it goes. It becomes a career.
Yeah. So you can build skills that aren't in the traditional mold of STEM or whatever, that can gear you up for success far greater than you ever thought possible. And I will say that all 3 of my children have more than paid back the exorbitant cost of their college education. My daughters were in Boston, private schools there, enormously expensive. But, 10 years down the road, they may make it back in a year now. But all these things are available. So again, the book that you need to go take a look at, if you have anybody who is thinking of college, trying to figure out how to pay for it, is Graduate Debt-Free, Escaping the Student Loan Matrix. I would call it Escaping Debt Slavery or Debt Servitude.
That was an early title.
Yeah.
That was an early title, Indentured Servitude. Yeah.
And, it's not bad, but there's a lot of options out there. We've got a link in the show notes to this interview, to the book, so you can obtain it. If you got a question for Dave, myself, shoot us an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. Make sure when you're at the site, financialsurvivalnetwork.com, you click subscribe, because you will learn all these hacks. In every aspect of finance, in business, there are hacks. I mean, Dave, I used to travel pre-pandemic a lot more than I do now. Just haven't really gotten back into it. But I had like every single travel hack that you could imagine, and saved me hours and hours. It really makes a difference. So if you know the hacks and you got some substance, it will take you a long, long way. Dave, appreciate you coming on. We will definitely talk to you again, and be well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.